Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast with Cheryl Thompson. And we're going to act like it's absolutely fine that it's 15 minutes late. It's fine. We
There's
didn't have
nothing to
loads of
see here.
problems. Everything is fine. Oh, it's been one of those days, but yeah. Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I'm really, really excited to have Cheryl with me. Today is basically Alistair's, but totally fine. Yes. Yeah, like Ross in Friends. I'm fine. Okay. Fine. We are going to be talking about speaking your truth. So, hi, Cheryl. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm good.
Oh,
I'm glad we're here finally. But yeah, I'm good. And I always
I
have
feel
to
like.
say,
Yeah, go on.
sorry, my dog sits next to me. So if a ginger dog pops up, just carry on. She's always next to
That's
me.
fine.
So
She's always there. That's fine.
she's always welcome.
I feel like my subscribers should know by now anyway, not to expect things to go to plan. So if I say 4:30 or actually 12:30 GMT, it's 4:30 here in Dubai. Expect 4:45 because or 4:45 because I just it's just this is my life.
It's interesting you say that because that's all about speaking the truth, isn't it? You think about what we're doing. It's a real, like, unintentional but perfect segue into what it is about speaking truth. Because as you were saying that, I sat there and thought, anybody who works with me, you never have to apologize for being late with me because I understand that lives are what they are. Technology is what it is. We have things that are outside of our control. So when somebody will say to me, I'm so sorry, I'm late, I'm like, no need, never any need.
No.
Also, if you work with me, that's how it runs as well, because funnily enough, I have a life and things happen.
Things happen, yeah.
And I won't apologize for that. I won't apologize. And that's, I think, a real bit. And I say to people, if that's not comfortable for you, then I'm not the human for you. With love as well. Find someone who does it differently. But that's a big piece, and one that most
it's
people
interesting because I get really panicky about being late, and it's not. It doesn't come from a place of like anyone else. It's like literally, it's like if I'm late, I get such bad anxiety and I can't settle then for the rest of the day. So if I turn up to something even 5 minutes late, I'm so panicked by the time I arrive that I'm just like stressed out. So I try to always be early for things because everyone else is like, oh, don't worry about it, like people don't care, and I'm like, oh, like turn up in a complete like mess, kind of like everything went wrong, so.
But it's a funny one that though, because I'm the opposite. So I know you're like that because I've seen it on one of your posts where you said that's how it impacts you and it makes you feel. So I always have to be really mindful of who I work with, because even coming to this today, you sent me a message saying, hi, I'm waiting and I'm here. And I was like, and I was sort of trotting down. And I knew that, but we had issues with sort of firewalls and different things like that. But that wouldn't ordinarily create me any concern whatsoever. But I know it creates you concern because I've seen it in your post before. So I'm sat here thinking, and I'm a sweary person thinking, fuck, Jeri's going to be worked up. I need to work up. But it would never bother me normally. But it's that whole sort of each other, isn't it? That consideration.
It is. It is, definitely.
If you go for a drink with me, don't expect me to turn up on time.
Okay. It's like my sister. She's like, don't expect it. I've never done it. I'm never going to. Like literally, she's just, this is me and that's it. And I'm like, no, that is fair. Like if we arrange anything, just tell her it's like half an hour earlier than it actually is. And then she'll get there on time.
Let me tell you the thing with that, with people like us, when people do that to me, now I sit there and I go, I bet we're not actually meeting at 3 in the afternoon. They've just said that to me. So then I'll go, well, I'll actually just put some more time on it because no one will actually be there then. So then we start double bluffing each other.
Yeah. It doesn't work, does it? And that's not speaking your truth at all.
Mine is, you just sort yourselves out and I'll rock up when I'm ready. I would never leave one person on their own in a bar though. Let me say that.
No.
But if it's a group of them, I'll just catch you when I'm there.
Yeah.
Go have fun.
Just don't worry about it. Yeah, exactly. So listen, we're talking about speaking your truth today, and that's something that you and I have touched on a few times on various posts on LinkedIn, and we've had private conversations and you kind of brought it to my attention. It wasn't something that I consciously knew about as a as a thing, if you like. I'm not great with words, as in I don't elaborate quite often on things. I'm quite sort of to the point, and then you will elaborate on things I've said, and I'm like, yes, that is what I meant. What Cheryl said, basically, every time. So why is it so important to you? Why is speaking your truth so important to you?
Well, do you know, I was thinking about this general title, Speaking Your Truth, and what it and I don't normally plan or prepare for any of these things. I just turn up and talk as I am. But it made me think about it only sort of yesterday. I was like, it's funny that, because it could mean a lot of things, speaking your truth. And something that I find really interesting about communication in general is making sure we understand what the other person means, because we have different definitions of things. And when I was thinking about the title, Speaking Your Truth versus Speaking the Truth,
yes,
they're different, aren't they? They are.
Yeah, they are.
One's just don't lie, don't be a dick, don't lie. And when you talk about speaking your truth, I think that's more about knowing who you are as a human, what you stand for, what you won't tolerate, and embodying that and living it. And it doesn't have to. And then it brings into, because bear in mind, I do like words, and I'm a bit of a, that's my sort of interest, language. Then we go on to the word speaking. It doesn't have to be speaking.
No.
It's being, it's living, it's showing, it's demonstrating, it's communicating in what you say and what you don't say, who you stand with and who you don't stand with. And I think that's speaking your truth. And it's interesting you say you'd never consciously really thought about it. You live it in everything you do. You don't have to say you speak your truth, because you just do. And that's one of the things that has made me really aligned with who you are. And I mean, there's lots of other things as well. There's lots of other things that I'm definitely a fan of yours. We did it last time we got on, where we were like, no, I'm a fan of yours. No, I'm a fan of yours.
I love you, but I love you.
And so there's lots of things I love about you. But one of the things I love about you the most is that you speak your truth and the truth in that moment. And truths can change and develop and grow and evolve. So who we were a year ago and what we said then doesn't have to be who we are today. But you're so brave in doing that. And if people disagree with you, you're willing to stand there. You're willing to go, but that's just me. I'm not trying to be you, and I'm not trying to tell you what to be. This is me. And it's one of my huge admirations of you. You do it all the time.
I think that I was quite naive to it when I first joined LinkedIn, because I didn't have such an impact then, because not as many people saw my content, and I would just say stuff in the same way I would just say it in life on LinkedIn and not think anything of it. And then all of a sudden people sort of would really take offense, or would completely disagree, or in some cases just be completely vile. And I remember sort of thinking, oh, like, that's so strange. I used to just be like really taking it to heart. And, sort of there were times where I just deleted my LinkedIn account. I was like, I can't handle this anymore. And as time went on and I got more followers, it became more well known, I guess. It became so much harder, because I was so free with it in the early days, because it didn't have so much of an impact. And then all of a sudden people started to say things like, I remember one in particular, when I had posted about getting the new car, and I had put the video on, and I'd had this video made, and it was great. And I was so proud and happy. And it was, that's great, Jeri. How much have you donated to charity this year?
I remember that.
And that one, and I remember going, and I was, and the problem is that I'm always really sarcastic. So I'll say something like can be taken really out of context, but I will always just be like really narky back, because I don't want to get into an actual, like, that's probably where I differ to you, because you're so eloquent with your words and you have a way of putting things across, whereas I just think, oh, shush, right? So instead of actually, but I remember going like, oh, I don't have to explain myself to you. And she was like, but you do, because you have a corporate responsibility to everybody that can see what you're doing. And I remember thinking about it, thinking, God, I don't want that. Like, I don't want any responsibility for anyone else, like, literally. And I've kind of ended up with it.
That makes me really mad, though. And can I swear? I always have to double check.
You absolutely can. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, good. Because otherwise I wouldn't be speaking my truth. But I also...
No, exactly.
As you were talking then, the words that came to me were, go fuck yourself.
Mm.
You don't have any obligation. And these are boundaries that we are entitled to put in place for our own sanity and protection. And they are you don't have to justify yourself. You don't have to explain yourself. They're non-negotiables. And I remember that post. I mean, God, haven't people got a lot of upset over your car?
Yeah, a lot. And it was interesting because I know, and I feel like the problem is, not the problem, the thing that I tend to do, or I have always done, is I will then play up to it because I think it's a little bit funny. So when I know people are livid about it, like I will then kind of go the other way and act like, you know, I'm bragging. I'm absolutely not bragging. I'm just proud, and that's a totally different thing. And I'm trying to, and I'm allowed to be proud, and I'm allowed to try and inspire people and all those kind of things. And but then when people try and tear you down, and a lot of people did about the car, it was really interesting. It was really interesting how it really, really wound people up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, for various different reasons, you know, people have their own reasons for feeling triggered by that. And that's on them. But I just remember that for me was the point when I realized that I felt like I can't just say what I want anymore. I just can't, because it's almost not worth the volume now, because it's so much bigger, of having to, you know, deal with this onslaught of unhappy people. Fahima's put, they're just jealous on the comments.
And Fahim's absolutely bang on. They are. And I'm going to sort of follow that Fahim's threads there. But before I do, what bothers me about that is then they are diminishing all the goods that you do. Mm. So all the good that you do, and the people, you're an inspiration to people. People seeing you're like, what she's got, what that over there, that's what I want to do. And I do a lot of work, and you know what my job is. I do a lot of work with within my coaching and about people. And I just did a session on it, and it sounded like I was some like sort of dark witch. It was called Embrace the Darkness. And what that was about was, I was like, oh, this is not voodoo. We're not doing anything like that. But you can have these negatives there. There's Luke, by the way. He was there.
Yeah, I just wanted to spin in it. I was just happy for you and that you could reward your success. Love it. Yeah, loved it. Thank you, Luke.
Right too. But when we did the Embrace the Darkness session, which Luke was part of actually, it was about understanding when you get these feelings. So the jealousy that Fahim's talking about, these people sat there and they were jealous of your success in your car, and also your courage to be proud of yourself, because they would never have dared stepped out in public and gone, look at me, look what I did. Yeah. So they were jealous of so many facets of your life. But what they did is they decided to attack you for it, instead of using a huge opportunity of what you've done by putting a mirror up and going, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling this way? And pointing at Jeri about it instead of looking back to me. And if they'd have done that, they could have gone, do you know what? I'm jealous. And the reason I'm jealous is because I want some of that. So how can I go and make my life successful? They missed a huge opportunity to turn it round and galvanize action from a dark feeling that they had. And that is on them. But don't let it finish you.
No, and that's the thing. Like it's how and it knocks me back on occasion. It's how I then deal with that. Do I, I'm definitely not my full self online. I would say I'm about 90%. Okay. And I definitely used to be my full self, and I just said whatever. And my posts were much more interesting, I think, like a few years ago, because I would just go blah, 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 like this just happened and I can't believe it. And, I remember putting a post on once, again, this was years ago, saying that a particular school receptionist was so rude. And she was always so rude. And every time I'd go in, I would just ask like a normal question, and she just rude and like, why? And I'm like, why are you in that job? Do you know what I mean? Like, what? There's no need for it, kind of thing. And everyone was like, oh, it's like doctor's receptionist, like, and then everyone was like, kind of, we were like laughing and joking about it. And then again, someone was very angry about it and saying, what you should do is you should see if they're okay, and you should have empathy, and you should, and I'm thinking like, and it ended up in actually quite a big argument. And he really was like, I'll never work with you or anyone on this post that thinks it's funny, like da da da. And because a lot of the things I used to say were always quite lighthearted, people don't necessarily get that from what I've written. I know how I intend it. I know that it's a little bit of fun, it's a little bit entertaining, like I'm trying to lighten the mood. And people don't always get that from, like, you can't always communicate that in the written word, basically, unless you put a disclaimer underneath every single one going, please don't take this to heart, like no one was hurt in the making of this post, like, you know. You just can't. Gothy is, but how many employees did you pay that year contributing to the economy? Exactly, like I did. I have a team of people that I pay, and it's not just about the car, it's about what the car represents and the company and everything. So yeah, that's true. But
even so, this is something, and again, we actually came up in a session yesterday, but it's something, I was going to do a TED talk on it. So next year, I'm probably going to be doing a TED talk. We had to cancel this year's TED talks, but they've been moved to next year. So I am doing a TED talk. But I think the world is full of, and this is going to sound really, this could trigger someone. So, trigger warning. Which I also think is a bit of bullshit as well, that we shouldn't have to do that, because I think
we shouldn't.
Triggered is an opportunity to respond to it and to heal itself. So you shouldn't have to apologise for that, but each to their own. But I think the world at the minute, and I can see a real trend of this happening. And bear in mind, I've been sort of sexually assaulted in the workplace, so I was #MeToo. However, I think the pendulum's swung the other way, and I think right here and right now we're in a position where people are desperate to be a victim of someone else. How can I find a victim? Something that you've done to hurt me. What you were saying there about that, receptionist. The receptionist wasn't on the post, was she? She wasn't in the audience. So all these people are like almost borrowing pain from someone else. Let me go and take your problem and make it mine and be traumatized about what you've said. And have this response, and these people are like almost living and breathing someone else's trauma because we need to be traumatized, and that's not a healthy way to be. No wonder mental health is going through the roof, because we don't just feel our own problems at the minute, we feel everybody's, and we find a way to attack someone. So I think we've got a world of willing victims and accidental perpetrators. Genuinely. You are a problem to someone by mistake. You did nothing, but you're the problem now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I put a post on a couple of days ago. Again, you probably would have seen it, but it was saying, when you're hated by someone, you've kind of, sorry, it's my husband in the background.
Don't apologise for your family. Your family
and my kids.
I'm suddenly getting the headphones and sneaking out.
Yeah. They're not allowed on the internet because it makes it too slow, so they're having to entertain themselves. So I put the post on about how, and it's something I'd sort of read somewhere, and I'd kind of interpreted it my way, but kind of when you're hated, that's when you've made it in a way. And then again, it's so subjective. Made it is absolutely the most subjective thing ever, right? What I think is made it is totally different to what you think and everybody else thinks, okay? But someone was like, I don't think I'd rather just not be hated, right? So would I. I'd much rather not be hated by anybody. There's people that hate David Attenborough. It's not, the person on my post was trying to make a point that, like, what you're doing to be hated, like, I'd rather just not be hated. And I'm like, I get what you're trying to say, and I agree with you. I don't want to be hated, but you can't help it. You cannot help. I could just literally, like I say, people hate David Attenborough. They're like nicest person ever, right? There are some people that hate him. It doesn't matter what you do or say. I will be hated by someone somewhere. So you just have to carry on regardless, right?
And when you say the bit about, you've made it when you're hated, I actually think what that means in terms of the subjectivity of you've made it is actually in a spiritual or mental and emotional capacity.
Yes.
When you're comfortable in the discomfort, or when you're comfortable disliked, you're free.
Yes.
You're absolutely free.
That is it.
So I think that's the purest way for me, whatever your subjectivity is on the made it. But if all of a sudden I'm not trying to appease you or try and make you safe or happy, and I'm just living my life. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to go out there and be a wanker to people, but like living my life as human, but I'm not terrified of your judgment. The only person I should care about is when I look in the mirror, and can I answer my own values and beliefs?
If
I can do that, then actually that, Joe over there who thinks I'm a knobhead, and that's on him, because like you say, if he hates David Attenborough, I mean, show me these people.
I know,
I'll sit them down and have a word. But
I know, he's a national treasure.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But there'll always be somebody. So
there'll always be somebody, and it's absolutely exhausting to try to not be hated or disliked or whatever you want to call it. You can spend all your time worrying. I could literally worry about it all day long, and people that don't post much online, someone will dislike them. Someone that posts all the time online, it doesn't matter. I could literally say, I had a lovely day out today with the family, and someone will say, this is not the place to be posting about your family, and they'll be fuming about it, and you can't. And that's the thing, it's just absolutely exhausting. And you get to the point where you're right, you just go, oh, I just don't care, like I'm not hurting anybody. And that was kind of my response to the person that put the comment, was like, all I'm doing is living my best life, or trying to live my best life, and help people. Right? That's all I'm trying to do. So if by doing that people dislike me, I can't do anything about it. Like, you just gotta go with it.
Exactly. And I come from a family. My mum and dad, I'll just quickly tell you, my mum is the nicest woman you'll ever meet. She sits on the fence. She's kind. She's lovely. She's jolly. She'll make everything go away. Drives me mental.
Yeah.
My dad, on the other hand, and my parents are split up, and it was my mum that I sort of saw, but I'm genetically my dad's daughter. I know I am. He likes to debate. He likes to understand. He likes to look under things and pull it to parts and put it back together again. And that's more me. I'm like, but why? Why do we do that? And why do you think that? And I want to understand. I want to learn more. And I exhaust my mum. John, my partner, is more like my mum. He's just very sit on the fence, mellow.
Yeah.
I am the head case because I have.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not an argument. That's just understanding. But I think when we talk about, like, again, speaking your truth, there'll be things that you have an opinion on that I have the opposite opinion on. But to me, that doesn't have to be a problem. That's actually really exciting. It's like, ooh, why do you think that, Jeri? Why do you think the other way? I love, if I go into my friendship group or even my social media, like, network group, and if everyone thought the same thing as me, I'd be bored stiff. Because how do you learn otherwise?
You can't.
But I tell you what people don't do, and this is, similar to the thread of what we've been saying here. And it's, again, with what Fahim was saying about they're jealous. People want to look outside of themselves for the problem. They want to make everyone else the issue, instead of going, why? What is it about me that this? Why do I get bothered by this? Why am I bothered about Jeri's willingness to talk and be open?
Yeah.
There's a problem there, but they don't look at themselves; they look at you. And people need to start turning that inward. What can I do differently?
Definitely, Alistair. Alistair has said, it is funny, I started out being very conservative and corporate, but it was meeting Jeri and reading content that enabled me to be me, which now gets me into all sorts of trouble. And a laughing emoji. It is harder. Trying to be vanilla all of the time is much harder. It is. And if you do that, like, I remember times where I put a picture on of like Fran, my office manager. So, like, years ago, she's been with me since day one, years ago. And like in our new office that we had back then, and like, proud at her desk. And I was like, she joined me in my garage and now we're in an office, really happy post. Like, I'm so excited that we've got our first little office and here's Fran and everything. And the people were so nice. And then, someone was like, why would you have the wires like that? Like, it looks awful. And I hadn't even seen in the picture that the wires looked weird. Like, I would. And I was like, how have you missed? You've missed the entire point of the post. And then you've said something negative. And you're absolutely right. Like, that's them. Something's wrong with them, as in they have an issue and they're projecting it onto me. But I remember thinking, wow, if you can find something negative in such a lovely, happy post, like,
go get some therapy.
then trying to be vanilla, it doesn't work. You're still not going to be vanilla to everyone. You just won't.
Well, in that sense, and talking of the vanilla thing, you almost need to tell them, I think you need to go and have a word with yourself. I think you need to go and inspect your life, that if you can find there's something so beautiful and you can find the one thing that in your opinion needs changing, jog on, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely do. And that's the thing, you won't I've realized that my saying is, you can let it bother you, but don't let it stop you. I have this conversation with a lot of people where they say to me, how do you deal with trolls? How do you deal with people being unkind, saying not very nice things to you online? Because obviously you get it quite a lot, and I don't get it a lot, but you know what I mean? Like, I've got a bigger presence now, so naturally, like statistically, I get more. And I say, do you know what? Because they're like, oh, doesn't it just really bother you? And I go, yeah. Like, it does bother me. I'm not going to sit here and, I was like, some days I literally will just delete LinkedIn for like 2 weeks because I just need space. I'm a human being, and it absolutely don't think for a second it doesn't bother me, because it does bother me, but it does not stop me. And that's the difference. I'm like, so you can let it bother you and you can deal with it however you need to deal with it, but you've got to carry on, you've absolutely got to carry on.
But I think that's, again, another distinguishing factor about you is, and I think the world is often dictated by fear. So I think even though it hurts you, you don't suppress it, you don't deny it, it's there, you're human, you don't change because of it, and you get back up and go again. But that's why you're financially successful. That's why you employ people. That's why you've got your academy. That's why you've got this dream life, why you've got a family who worship you, because you get back up again. We go again. No, but it is, and that is the difference. Anyone who's watching this, or anyone, at any point that's thinking about these things, the difference between the successful and the not so successful is getting back up again. You get knocked, you get hurt, you get bruised, bleed a bit sometimes, however hard it is.
Yeah.
You do this, you dust yourself down, you go, we go again.
Yeah.
That's
and we go again.
When I watch you. And it's funny, let me just say this, it makes me laugh when you go. And Fran's been with me. I know all about Fran because I follow you. It's you telling me.
Everyone else is like, we know.
I remember the post when you're like, this is one picture and this is the other, and this is where we started from.
I know.
People aren't on LinkedIn know about you starting in your garage.
I know. It is mad. It is mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. Right, you've got a few more comments and things, so let's read these out. So Matt has said, we've got to step out of the paradigm we are all living in, and things will get much, much better. You're probably better to respond to that, Cheryl.
Well, I'd love to know, because Matt said that about paradigm earlier on. So if Matt's still listening, I would love to know, actually, genuinely, his opinion, what his description of the paradigm is that we're living, because he was saying it to an early part of the conversation. And I think it was about our social media, but I'm not sure.
100%.
There could be different paradigms depending upon what he means. So Matt, if you're still listening, tell us what paradigm you mean, and we'll respond to it in a more full capacity.
Perfect.
So I'll leave it there until he comes back to us.
Luke, lovely Luke, has said, question. In speaking your truth, should we be open to challenge and discussion of that truth? And I mean genuine, non-victim mentality, challenge and discussion. So I think I have got a lot better at accepting that people disagree with me quite often, right? And I've realized, I remember someone saying once, and they worded it so well, and they were absolutely disagreeing with me, but they worded it so well. Maybe. No, it was a guy. I remember it was a guy. And he said, it's so important that we talk about the fact that we disagree.
Yes.
And, you should want people to disagree with you, because that's how we learn. That's how we talk. That's how and I was like, I feel like there's been a few times I've said things, and then based on the responses, I've actually changed my opinion. And I never thought I would, but I've had conversations with people and I've gone, oh, I didn't actually think about that. Yeah. And no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I've changed other people's opinions by things I've said, and they've gone, I just never thought about it that way. And I'm like, when he said that, I thought, yes, I actually do want that. I do want that discussion with people when it's polite and respectful.
And it's interesting you say that, because the alternative to that is an echo chamber. And we hear people really I hate some of these sort of terms, echo chamber. But when I used to work in financial services before I started as a coach, I used to, you always have those people in office when you work in corporate buildings and there's hundreds of people, where there's always someone who just negative about everything you say. And people would sit in management meetings and there'd be one on each team and people would be like, you mean we don't like that person? And I'm like, oh, I love that person. I'm like, what do you mean? I went, that person on your team, if I've got something that I'm about to launch or an idea or whatever, I go and find, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen you talking to whoever on my team. I'm like, because if you ever want someone, they hate me. They literally snarl at me as I walk past them. I said, so I'll go and say, read this. What do you think? And they're like, why are you asking me? Because if anyone's going to tell me I'm wrong, it's you. So you were my risk manager. That's how I used to see it. So everyone else would go, yeah, that's brilliant, Cheryl. Yeah, that's wonderful. Let's do it. I'm like, no, I don't want you to just say yes. If I'm wrong, tell me. Have the courage to tell me I'm talking shit. So I'd go and find that person, seek them out, and ask them for their feedback. And then if they told me, don't get me wrong, they might rip it to bits, and I might think, well, you went a bit far on that one. I think you're right. But you listen to what they've got to say, and you decide what you do with their truth. So for me, Luke, it's an absolute. Don't just I go and seek out that person that will disagree with me and give them permission, full permission. I was like, I can take this. I'm a big girl. I can take it. Tell me where I've messed up. Because then I can go and make amendments to it. But then what I always do, and I think this is really important, is credit that person. Because so often than not, people get knocked for speaking their truth. And they'll be like, well, that was a bit cruel, a bit harsh. Whereas I actually go, and I just want to thank that person because no one else had the courage to tell me what a load of rubbish I was talking. That person did. So thank you for having the courage to stand up. And certainly standing up to someone in a position of power. Yes. So if you're in an employer position, you own a business and you employ people, we may always think that people are telling us the truth, but you've got to create a culture of hard truth and then not reacting badly to it.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I've now got to a point, I think that was a crucial change in my business where I went from, I think I know everything and my way is the right way. And, people that work for me who are no longer working for me for various reasons, but it just wasn't the right, it wasn't working. And I couldn't, I don't know how the penny dropped or what happened. I think it was actually a case of I employed certain people that challenged me. They still challenge me now. And because they challenged me, my business is so much better. It is so much better, getting people that I have my strengths and they have their strengths, and they will quite often go, hear what you're saying, but because I'm like the entrepreneurial, like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, blah, 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 like crazy kind of change my mind every day. And they're like, okay, can we just, we don't think that's the right thing for these reasons. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I didn't think about that. So, it's so true. And, I think I'm just so glad that I have these people that are courageous and do what we all try to do is what is best for the business. And sometimes we make emotional decisions, all of us, not just me, and we realize, and it's like we made an emotional decision then, not necessarily that it was a wrong decision, but it was an emotional one, rather than and they're not always wrong, but it's like, I said to one of my managers once, oh, what was your decision about XYZ? And he said, I hadn't actually decided when I went into the meeting, but because of whatever, I decided right there and then. And I went, so you made an emotional decision? And he said, yeah.
But was it the right one?
I think it was the right one if you'd gone about it the other way, but it just so happened to be the right one. So yeah, I don't think it was fine. It was absolutely fine, and it wasn't a problem. But it's always trying to put the business first. We have to do that. We have to do what's right for the business, because that is naturally what is right for the team. What is right for the clients. Yeah, absolutely. The team and the clients, because they are what the business is. Alistair put, yay, I'm successful. Real life is gritty and you should always want to debate, discuss and retain your own opinion. Courage, confidence and resilience is what seems to be lacking in society today. What do you think about that?
So I think personally, and Alistair, totally agree with you. And courage for me, I think people are lacking courage. I think people are scared. They're living from fear. They're living from sameness. So if I'm just same as the person next to me, the same as the person next to me, then I'm less likely to get called out or get hurt or lose. And we are, as humans, we are pack animals. That's what we want. Mm-hmm. But you've got to decide, and you've got to decide whether you're a leader or a follower in society. And there's nothing mm-hmm. wrong with either. But what I think people fail to understand is that it takes courage to be both. And there's ways of which you do it. And I think in society at the minute, people feel so ground down, and linking back to what I said earlier about people who seem to want to be willing, that was hard for me to say, willing victims. Willing victims. I think society's changing, and I think if we don't take a conscious choice, and it's another thing that I love about what you do, Jeri, you're conscious in your decision making. Like even with that story that you just told us there about one of the managers, you brought consciousness to the decision that he'd made, and, mm-hmm. and made it present. But we're all just sort of sleepwalking. Mm. And that's when we're talking about retaining your own opinion, it's almost like we get browbeaten by the loudest people in the room.
Yes.
And I'm a loud person, by the way. So I am one of the loudest people in the room. But we've got to create space for other people as well. And we've got to create space for people to make mistakes.
Yes.
It's okay to get wrong. If someone dies, that's a different problem. But most of the time, wrong doesn't kill someone. But allow people to be on their journey as well, and allow people to develop their own thought processes. We don't do any of that. We just shout at each other. And on social media as well.
Oh my God. On social media, it's like I see people, I see someone will put a comment on with a different point of view, and mm-hmm. then someone will effectively shout at them, even though they're not mm-hmm. using capitals, but it's like they're being shouted at. And, you're, how can you say that? Like really aggressive. Mm-hmm. And the other person just doesn't respond again. And you can tell they're probably thinking, I just can't, I don't want to. Whereas if someone had said, okay, see your point, but what about this? Mm-hmm. Or appreciate where you're coming from, but have you thought about this side of things? And I think that's when you see discussion, but it doesn't happen very often on social media. It's just a shouting match. Yeah,
and I don't think people actually give credit to how much effort it takes to respond in a healthy way.
Yeah,
it takes like when you were saying earlier about all the stuff that you get, and sometimes you said at the beginning you said something which was a lovely compliment to me. You said that I articulate and go back, and sometimes you just like, I don't want to do that. But and I actually was thinking, it's funny, the other way around, I was thinking, I really admire the way you just go, I'm not interested. Because I can't. I sit there and I'm like, I can't let this opportunity pass to help this person understand my perspective, because I think everything's an opportunity. That's exhausting sometimes.
Yeah, that is.
It really is. So I almost want to learn from your school of thought as well, to go, because this is another thing, when I was thinking yesterday about what does speak your truth mean, doesn't mean you always have to speak. Sometimes actually silence can speak your truth. Mm-hmm. You don't have to speak.
Yeah.
And I almost have to tell myself that more often than not, based upon what I've just said, that I think it's an opportunity to talk. Sometimes I think it's an opportunity to cut someone out as well and say,
yes,
you don't warrant my attention.
No.
That's my truth.
So many people don't. And that's, I block a lot of people, a lot, on a daily basis. I block people because I don't have the patience. You are much more patient than I am with responding to people. I think because I don't feel confident in the written word, like as in I'm fine and I can post things in my own kind of way of saying it, but I know what I want to say a lot of the time, but to try and articulate that would be too exhausting for me. So I just kind of literally will just avoid it. And then if people are even remotely sarky, anything that's not respectful, I'm like, block. I just don't want to see it. Don't want to deal with it. Whereas I think you are just much better at kind of, because you explain things in such a lovely way, I've seen you full on disagree with people in the most beautiful way. And I read it and I'm literally like, Like, I just love it. And like when I see a notification that you've commented, I get so excited. I'm like, what? And then I see like this paragraph and I'm like, oh, can't wait to read it. Like, I just honestly, like, I just, that you are just so, you put your point across so well. And I think that is just such a skill. Like, not many people have that.
Do you know what I would love to do? I'm going to have to come over to Dubai for this. I would love to come over, us go out on a night out, and you see me verbally do what I do in a written form. Because I'm much politer in written form, because people can take text in so many different ways. So I don't try not to leave anything to chance. But when I'm not writing, I've got all this. So I don't have to quite, I mean, don't get me wrong, I can articulate myself, but my face says a lot more than my words do. Honestly, people, my friends, when we go out, they'll be like, what? And my nickname's C-Bomb. So like, watch C-Bomb put this person to bed. Yeah, because I watch C-Bomb deal with this. And they're like, you can just put people in a box. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'm proud of that, but I sort of am a bit as well. Because if I need to just like, go fucking sort your life out. Not on my watch. But we have to, you know, coming back to the point of blocking people, I try hard not to block people. So if you get blocked by me, you've really pushed a button. You know, you've had quite a long fuse of it. Because
you have much more tolerance than I do with that, 100%.
But that doesn't make my way right or your way wrong, or it doesn't make your way right. It just makes us personal to what we need. And there will be times when, for example, over, you know, when the Roe versus Wade situation came out, abortions in America, I was on holiday, actually. I was in Egypt around a pool, and that I knew that decision was coming. So it came because it had been rumbling for a while. And some of the things I saw, the aggressions against women having choices and horrific things, you know, like, and we won't go, but like there was a 10-year-old little girl that had been hurt and raped, and she was pregnant, and she'd have to have that baby now. So I was like raging, like the rage in me coming from it, thinking of a little girl and her little girl body. So, and there were people going, well, that's what God intended. And so all my niceness, literally like, you're a fucking prick. You know, like that's there was no like, filter of, you know, be nice to these people. And I have no apologies for that. And I blocked so many people at that time, because whilst I'm all about speaking your truth, and this is a really important thing, and just so you know, for some reason, I can't see the chat anymore. So if people are chatting, I can't see them.
I'll let you know. Yeah.
It's just said that all of a sudden it said that now my chat's invalid. How dare you when we're speaking our truth?
I know, yeah.
To silence me. Where was I even up to that? About speaking your truth, one thing I always say to people from a communication perspective is, you can speak all you want, but I don't have to listen.
Yes.
So talk to whoever you want. But if it offends me, if I'm not interested in it, I will shut this shit down and I'm gone.
Yeah.
And if we actually want to step close to one another as human beings, we have to find a way to communicate that's palatable to our audience. So if I want to try and help somebody understand something that I'm really passionate about, I might have to consider how you want to be communicated with, rather than me just communicating. But that's a choice I make. Or I can just rant into the wind if I want. But it's my choice. But it's your choice whether you want to listen. And I think that's the important thing about truths. You don't get the right to force people to listen to your truths.
No, that is just such a such an interesting thing. It makes me think about let me just read a couple of things out before I go into that. Jane Deeks of that consultancy has said, I'm glad you haven't blocked me, Jeri. I haven't. And Jane is another one that definitely speaks her truth. She said a few things. Like, I watch what Jane comments and I'm like, hilarious. And sometimes it's like she disagrees with me, but like she in just a nice way. Love you, Jane. And Alistair has said, have either of you ever been banned by the LinkedIn police? I have not. I got my account suspended because of the activity that went through the roof. That was to do with, they thought I was using bots, but that wasn't like, I haven't actually been banned for anything I've posted or said. Have you, Cheryl?
I've never been banned, but I've had comments removed. But
I've had comments removed.
Yeah, and interestingly though, I've also had comments removed, and then months later they've reassessed it and gone, we shouldn't have.
Yes, I've had that.
Yeah. I had one where it did 3 in one day, and at the same day it had removed another one, and I was like, you were obviously going through a training session at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Mine are normally from being sweary, which I find interesting because we've talked about this a bit as well. I'm a real passionate person about language, and language, we can't deny it is evolved, and it involves swearing now. That's normal. It's not. But if someone doesn't like it, then don't follow me.
Exactly.
So no, never been banned. I don't think I've actually. I don't think I've ever. Like you were saying about haters. I have some haters, but they tend to be like extreme misogynists who, like. So I'm quite happy to be hated by them, but I don't think in the main I'm that controversial to be banned.
No, I don't think you are, and I think because you're so good at putting your point across in such a articulate way, I think that I couldn't imagine you'd get into any issues with that. But I was going to say on your point about people yeah. Oh, wonder what's going to happen. About your point about people don't have to listen, and we don't have to listen. We can say what we want. It reminded me of when the Queen passed away, and I was so upset about it. I was actually more upset about it than I would have thought I would have been. And it just really affected me. And what affected me was having to see a lot of people say negative things about the royal family and, about the Queen herself. Yeah.
She's a terrorist and a war criminal.
Yeah. All those kind of things about her. And, and I just wasn't able to deal with it, as it like I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to have conversations. It's like you say, you don't have to I was like, I'm not interested. Like, I'm literally going to come off of here. Yeah, we talked about it. Yeah.
It was one of my favorite things where you said something. I went, you do make me laugh. And you were like, I may make you laugh, but I still mean it. And I was like, she's just, you were like,
I was just so like, because I think you were like, I'll be ready to have these conversations in like,
and you were like,
a day or two. And I'm like, I'm just not though.
It's really funny. I remember getting that notification and reading it, and it's one of those things where you don't know. Again, if people know, because when I was saying you were funny, I wonder if she thinks I'm you're so funny. But I was like, you're so funny. I love how you're truthful with everything.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about this shit. I don't care. But I was willing to have that conversation. And actually, I ended up going on like a live panel with, and the chap's called Dale. He's an accountant, so you may know him.
I'm really rubbish with who people are.
Well, we went on. It was about racism, because I posed the question that the Queen was being accused of being, she was racist. The royal family are racist, and my grandma said some things, and my grandma's dead now. My grandma in my lifetime said some things that I'd be like, Grandma, you can't say that. You can't say that anymore. That language is not to be used. And she genuinely would look at me and go, why though? Because that's what we would like. Doesn't matter, Grandma. In today, you can't say it.
You can't say it. Yeah.
So is my grandma racist? Because she was an little old lady who was learning a new world. She was. Because life changes, and now I look, like you made reference Ross from Friends at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
I watch Friends now. I'm a big Friends fan, by the way. So when you said about, I'm fine. I don't know why my voice is doing this, but I'm fine.
Yeah.
When they're out Mexican.
Yes, yeah. Fajitas. Yeah.
And he goes and gets a picture of margaritas. So you can see I'm a fan. But now I watch Friends, and I'm like, oh my God, you can't say that now. That was only 20 years ago.
I know, I say the same.
So it just shows how much things move by. So I actually think if any of us looked back over our own childhood and our own adulthood, and I was saying, I know I will have said things that in today's age would have been called sexist or racist or ableist or ageist or, some other ist. But I can't erase that truth of who I was. But it's about your intention when you do it. Was I trying to be any of those things? No, back then it was a different era to where we are now. But I think we're in such a world today where we're almost like we can't be who we say we're going to be. And that conversation, just looping back to the conversation about the Queen, that prompted this almost live about race, it was, for me, it was horrific. It was a really uncomfortable, painful, and if anybody, you know, who was part of that, who's watching, it was horrific being asked to talk about race. And I was the only white person on the call as well. And they did sort of like, you know, like Dale laughed and he said, that wasn't intentional. It's, you know, like, it's like, you know, like Cheryl.
Oh, is it Dale Rodriguez?
Yes.
Oh, I know Dale. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I know Dale Rodriguez.
So like, this is just how it's ended up, not intentional. But it was a really difficult thing. So I was willing to, you know, like you said, you weren't willing to have the conversation about the Queen. I had the conversation, felt sick about it, literally came off and cried because it was so painful. And so sometimes you sit there and you think, I wanted to speak the truth. I wanted to open up a space. And by the way, it wasn't anything to do with anyone on the call that made that. It was just a difficult topic to be part of.
Difficult.
It was horrific, but it didn't mean that I wasn't willing to have it. And it doesn't mean I wouldn't be willing to have it again. But all I know is it will cost me to have it. But I'm willing to pay that price. But I think equally, you don't have to.
No.
You know, there's no obligation on any of us to do. Like, I got off the call, that call that was sent, and John saw me and I was crying. And he was like, why did you put yourself into these situations? He said, nobody would do this but you, Cheryl. He says, you're willing to hurt yourself to help other people. He said, I've never, and he's always like, because he's much more, don't do it. And he went, I just don't know anyone who's willing to sacrifice herself for others. And I was like, because I'm hoping the world will get a better place.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's easy though.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Jane has said, I've never been banned off social media, but I've been thrown out of a few places. I also got a swear box for a work Secret Santa present once. I think you and Cheryl would get on really well if you're not already connected.
We're not, but we should be fucking
Jane
connected. I don't get a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. Alistair has said, I think we actually did touch on this earlier, but what do you think about posts starting with trigger warning, point of view warning? Personally, I think it is a little sad, but that might just be me. My teen now says, Dad, you can't say that. And I'm so proud of her that she will stand up and say no. And that's it. That's important. It's about education. It's about learning. It's, you know, you can't, you know, all these things where like there'll be celebrities that said something 20 years ago and now they're cancelled. They can't do anything. They can't work. And I'm like, but you can't, you know, and like, I think it was Kevin Hart that said, I apologize for what I said back then if it offended anybody, but I'm not apologizing again. Like and he didn't get to the Oscars or something. Yeah. And it's like, you know, where do you draw the line?
And it's an interesting thing. Cancel culture, I think, I think we have an obligation to consider the way we're talking today. So think about what we're saying today and think about so if you think about the trigger warning that Alistair mentioned, I think it's important to be consciously and intentionally aware of what it is we're saying. But I don't think we can protect everybody from everything. And Jeri, you mentioned it earlier, unless I put, you know, nobody was harmed in the making of this, your trigger, your disclaimer thing would be this long. It would go longer than the post. So I almost feel like people need to start being self-managed and self-responsible. And I've said it, you know, a few times throughout this call. It's not about me looking to you to blame you. So I personally don't think there should be trigger warnings. I won't put a trigger warning. Mine won't say trigger warning. And if somebody is triggered by it, I'm happy to help them with that. So if they then want to say to me something about your post, really, because I did, a woman I know, I'd put something on about men being, I think it was last International Men's Day or around that time. And I said, it's not always women that are the victims. Men are the victims too. And a woman I know said, and I've worked with her, she went, your post really triggered me. It was horrible to see someone like you defending men. And she said, I've been a victim of domestic violence and I'm really struggling with it. And I had to take my child away. And I know that, you know, this woman's a brilliant woman. And I was so sorry for what she'd been through, but I'm not sorry for what I said. No. It doesn't change what I said. And I'm not, she said, you should have put, you know, because I expect you to be like an empowerment for women. Well, actually, you know, yeah, I am, but that doesn't mean it's never at the expense of men.
No.
No, it's the expense of knobheads, men and women. You know, I don't pick women over men. I'm not a misandrist. I just happen to be a woman. So I talk from my experience.
Yeah.
You know, so I said to her, I said, you know, I hear what you're saying and I'm sorry for what you've been through, but I won't apologize for my post either. I'm not doing that, and I won't edit it to pacify what your needs are. But I'm happy to talk you through it if you need something from me. You know, this was privately, but I won't be changing who I am and how I turn up in this world, because if I did, I'd never turn up. So I don't think you can put trigger warnings on things. And I think actually being triggered by something, if people have got the right mentality and health, and don't get me wrong, I know there is mental health issues, but we can't cater for everybody. Sadly, we can't. But actually, if you get triggered by something, get curious as to why in yourself. Don't go to the person. Ask yourself, what is it about this person that brings something out in me? What is that? What is that trying to teach me? So Alistair, no, I'm not up for trigger warnings personally. And all power, did he say to his daughter? I think he said.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, he said teen. I think it's teen. I think his teen or his daughter.
Yeah. He said I'm of her.
Oh, no, I'm proud of her. No, it is. Yeah.
So I'm really proud of her too, because actually one of the hardest relationships that you can stand up to is your parental or your caregiving relationships, because to stand up to the people that have brought you up is almost to subconsciously reject their parenting. So the fact that you've created a space for your teen daughter to say, Dad, you're wrong, you can't do that, means that you've been a brilliant dad. So all credit to you. She's got safety to challenge you. I love that.
Yeah. And that's so important. And I know you and I have touched on parenting and stuff, and that's a whole other podcast. a whole other podcast. But it's hard sometimes when the kids have got a lot to say and don't want to accept what they're being told. And it is hard, but I try so hard to see their point of view. I really do. And they're 9 and 7, so I want to discuss it with them, and I try to explain, and I try and listen to what they're saying and why they're saying it. And it is, don't get me wrong, I'm not absolutely not perfect, and I sometimes lose my shit. I'm talking quietly because they're there. But
I gathered,
I do try, and that's why I say things like, if I haven't got a good reason, you don't have to do anything that I say, because it's not you have to sit over there because I said so. We're not doing that in this household. Absolutely not. And I actually quite like that my 9-year-old has starting to get a bit of a attitude. I quite like it.
Well, bear in mind, I've got stepchildren, so I don't have my own birthed children.
Yeah.
But I have 11-year-old. I know that's literally what that meant, don't you? As a woman, But I have an 11-year-old stepson and a 9-year-old stepdaughter, and he's gentle and quiet. And bear in mind, I came into their life. They moved in with me 2 years ago. I've been with their dad coming up 6 years. So, and we have equal access, so 50-50. And every aspect of my life as a non-biological mother is planned around these two children. Everything I do is planned around them. And it always will be. Nothing comes before them, not one thing, and it never ever will.
Cry.
That's the choice I made. And when I got with John, I fell in love with John. And when I met his children a year later, I was terrified, because if I didn't love his children, or if I couldn't love his children, then me and John were over. Because I wouldn't be that step parent that saw her children as a burden or a problem.
No,
it was almost like going through is our relationship about to end?
Yeah.
Luckily, it didn't, and they were lovely. And if I could have gone to a pick and mix, I'd have picked these two. They would have been the ones. But they're so shy, and as you can tell, I'm not. So they're different to me, and their dad's quiet and their mum's quiet. So I'm trying to bring out something in them, and I think they're quite compliant children. So they're very well behaved. Now I'm trying to bring out a bit of curiosity and challenge. And so when, like, Cara, she'll come home and she'll explain something to me, she got told off at something that happened at school, and one child got treated one way and she got treated another way. And I'll go, did you ask why? She's like, I can't ask why, I'll get told off. I'm like, I'd be really surprised in school. They go to a Catholic school, so I'd be really surprised in this Catholic school's about learning. If you can't ask a question why about someone's human behaviour, then they're not encouraging you to learn. I said, and if they tell you off, I'll come and explain that to them.
Yeah.
I said, we have to be about encouraging challenge in everything we do. So because if you don't, and I always talk to Luke and Cara about the lesson behind the lesson, and they go, we don't know what you mean. And I'm like, I'm teaching you something, but I'm also teaching you why we do. I said, and I'm teaching you how. I said, if you don't become, because I'm obviously about leadership coaching, so I'll say, Luke will be like, Cheryl, I don't want to be a leader. And I'm like, don't want you to be a leader for anybody, Luke. I went, but you'll always be a leader. And he goes, what do you mean? I went, because I'm going to show you how to be the leader of yourself. Because if you don't lead who you are, someone else will.
Yeah.
I said, that's what I'm teaching you, how to know how to make decisions for yourself, how to challenge authority. So because just because someone said so doesn't make it right.
No.
I need you to have this risk management approach where you know how to challenge in the right way. When that's what you'll get. So John says they should be paying you thousands for this. I'm like,
yeah, literally.
You get it for free.
They get it for free, and they're very lucky. And you, by the sounds of things, you are lucky to have them. They are lucky to have you. You know, that's such a wonderful, lovely thing you've said. And you know, I obviously speak from a place of just having my own children, but when I talk to other people, I always talk about children coming first. You know, that in life in general, of course, my children come first in my life, but I find it very difficult when I feel like that's not the case. And, you know, conversations where people go, oh, you know, almost that the kid's a bit of an inconvenience and, you know, those kind of things. And I can't handle it because I'm like, they didn't ask to be born. Okay. They're only here because of you. Yeah. So they are so precious. And, you know, I follow some parenting accounts on various online and things. And I've maybe missed the boat a little bit because I started watching it. A lot of it's to do with toddlers and kind of what you do with them. Not that I've ever been particularly strict because I'm not a very strict person, but I watch a lot of it and I find it very fascinating. Thinking like they make me think all the time about how you know every communication is a need. You know, they're communicating a need no matter what it is. If people always think that kids are being naughty. I hear this all the time. Oh, my 3-year-old is so naughty. And I'm like, your 3-year-old is 3.
Your 3-year-old's communicating with you. It's
age appropriate behavior. Like, you know, people will say things like, oh, she's so naughty. We were leaving like Nana and Grandad's and she screamed the place down. And I go, yeah, because she didn't want to go and she's 4.
And she doesn't understand.
So she doesn't
understand. Short life. She just knows she's leaving the thing she wants.
I don't want to go. Yeah. So I'm like, it's not naughty. And I find all those kind of things. But yeah, we could talk about parenting like all day long. But
I genuinely think we could do another one on this because
we should.
It's a big thing. And I think if you understand parenting, you'll understand adulting.
Yes. Because so much of it comes into both.
We're just kids in big bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, because we talk about little humans, the mini humans.
The unmet needs, and it goes into trauma as an adult. But if you meet the needs that you as the child needed, you fix the rest.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Children have so much to teach us if we just pay attention.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Listen, we've been going for over an hour and I love it so much. And I could just sit here and I could just talk to you forever. I honestly could talk to you forever. I feel like I learned so much. Jana said Cheryl speaks so well. She's so good with words. And I say that all the time about her because honestly, I've never met someone so eloquent with the way they say things. And it's true though. It's absolutely true. And I mean it 100%. And like you say, it doesn't matter if we disagree. We're grown-ups. I disagree with my best friend who I've been best friends for 20 years with. You know, we love each other. It's not, I don't want to be around yes people, you know. So I do sometimes, but I mean, it would, like you said, it would be boring if we're all the same. So, you know, this has been such a great chat and I've loved it. And I feel like we should do another one at some point.
On parenting. Because I tell you what, we'll offend someone on parenting.
We will trigger a lot of people. I tell you what, I'll put a trigger warning on it. No, I won't really. No, I won't. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening to us today. Thank you for all your questions. They've been brilliant. And yeah, I've loved this. So thank you, Cheryl, for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
No worries. We got there in the end, didn't we? I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.